Hello, how's it going, all of you beautiful people around the world? My name is Ryan, aka Blackbeard TCG. I hope you all are having an amazing day today, and if not, hopefully I can make it a little bit better. Now look, in today's video, I'm finally telling you guys my honest thoughts and opinions on Queen. Now, to no shock to anybody, you guys should know that I'm extremely excited for Queen. I'm going to be breaking down why I'm extremely excited. I'm going to be talking about the cards that you guys can utilize in your Queen decks, and why you guys should be looking to pick up this deck. Now, do I think that this is the best deck of the format? It's still way too early to be like really tell and to determine that. It's only about 2 weeks into the OPO4 format. It looks like Purple Green Doflamingo film version is kind of holding that mantle, but we do see a lot of Queen topping events. We also see Rebecca performing really well, and honestly for me, I just find Queen to be a deck that's extremely fun to pilot, and just for that fact alone, it's a deck that I want to play, and it's a deck that I'm going to enjoy. Remember, at the end of the day, guys, this is a card game for you to have fun, and for me, Queen is an absolute blast. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. So, for those of you that don't know, this is what Queen does. Obviously, having 4 life, being dual colored, blue and yellow, when attacking with 1 Dawn attach, if the total, now remember, the total number of cards in your life and hand is 4 or less, you could draw 1 card. Now, if you have a character with a cost of 8 or more, you may place up to 1 card from the top of your deck to your life instead of drawing 1 card. So, at first, when I read this effect, I was like, this seems a little bit weird. Like, would this really be good? But then you really start to take a deep dive into the yellow cards and the blue cards and the synergies in which you can run. And that's when it becomes insanely fun. And Queen becomes the ultimate annoying grind deck. Now, for me, I can say that the only downside of piloting Queen is that your games are probably going to be going into time every single game that you play. Especially if it's a mirror match, it's 100% going to go to time. And if not, it's like, again, if your opponent knows how to play and knows how to beat Queen, then I could see the game obviously going shorter. But if not, then it's just going to become a grind fest and you will just win. It's a battle of attrition with Queen. The game plan with Queen is you just want to play for insanely late. You basically just want to continuously get card advantage by drawing. You want to get super low on life early on, and then you'll be very easily be able to stack it back up by using cards like Yamato, which we'll talk about later, as well as using your leader ability. So all of a sudden you could shoot up from 0 or 1 life all the way back up to 3 or 4 while you're slowly whittling down your opponent's life and establishing your board with big bodies. That's the game plan. That's the idea of Queen. And so the longer that the game goes on, the better for Queen. But of course, with a time limit in a tournament setting, again, you have to factor that as well. The games will be very long, and so because of that, if you're the type of person where, you want to have faster games, you're used to playing things like Zoro and some of those other decks, if you try to transition over to Queen, this playstyle might not be for you because it's a little more of a turtling playstyle, so to speak. But in my opinion, it's insanely fun. Okay, so now I want to talk about your win condition, right? We know that we can turtle the game out. We know we want to play defensive. We want to play with low life, so that way our ability can be activated. We can easily just add life back with using our ability, but then also we can continue to draw cards as well and generate advantage that way. So we know we want to do that, but how do we close out games? How do we win them? Well, we want to play a bunch of big body units. So the first unit that I don't recommend people play, in my opinion, is Kaido. So the new Kaido is strong. I love it. In fact, in my Crocodile OPO4 build, I'm running this guy. He is very, very powerful, and he's something that Blue desperately needed. With that being said though, I don't recommend it in my opinion in Queen builds. Now, why? Well, it's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. He costs 10 Dawn, and although his effect is very powerful and other blue decks like maybe an Ivankov or a Crocodile would benefit significantly by having him on board and having him be able to control the battlefield, I feel like I very much more value the ability to draw an additional card or get an additional life. Of course, obviously being able to bounce a card is something that's nice. You can get a blocker off board and things of that nature, but now you don't have any Dawn available to attach to your queen to allow it to have its ability. And so in essence, you're giving up your leader ability in order to play this really big card. Now, of course, there's a time and a place, and I can definitely see the value in this. Whereas for me, I would much rather, instead of playing this, maybe play something like a 9-cost Dracula Mihawk and then have one Dawn attached and still be able to pop off that way. Or maybe, you know, you could make the argument Dracula Mihawk can't hit everything in the game. Okay, well, what if I use an 8-cost Charlotte Katakuri instead, and then I still have Dawn available to play with after? In my opinion, these are options that you want to play over this Kaido. I think that, again, there's arguments that can be made to utilize the 10-cost Kaido, but for me, I don't use it in any of my builds, and I don't really recommend it, but what do I know? If you guys enjoy it, if you guys think it's really good, play it yourself. At the end of the day, that's the beauty of card games. Okay, so up next, I want to talk about 3 cards that I think that you need to play in this build, in my opinion. And I already talked about 2 of them recently. I talked about Dracula Mihawk, 9-cost, as well as Charlotte Katakuri. Both of these cards are very powerful, very potent, allow you to control the battlefield, and still allow you to have Dawn left over to attach to Queen and continue to play that grinded out game plan, so you can either draw or, of course, activate its ability and be able to add a card to your life instead. Again, you want to have these big cost bodies on the board, so that way the second half of your leader ability is now active. So it just makes sense, it works hand in hand. Dracula Mihawk being able to really control the board and send anything that's a cost of 7 or less to the bottom of the deck basically means it's removed from play. We all know that, unless obviously they reshuffle their deck, but for a lack of a better term, you guys know what I mean. And oh my god, look at this card art. As you guys know, it's my favorite card art in the game. I gotta include Mihawk where I can. But then with Charlotte Katakuri, another amazing removal tool that yellow has access to, where on play you could put one character with a cost of 8 or less to the top or bottom of the owner's life area face up. Now, again, you have access to things that are 7 or less with Mihawk, and now with Katakuri you have things that are 8 or less to the top or bottom of your opponent's life area. You have removal, so you're being able to control the board, and now you still have Dawn open to attach to your queen. And if you need to draw another card because you're already sitting at a bunch of life, then you can go ahead and do so, or you can go ahead and add 1 life to your life area if you feel like you need to top yourself off. I think that these 2 cards are a no-brainer. The third card, and probably the one that's my favorite and I love to pull off, is the yellow Yamato 9-cost 9,000 power. On play, you can KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost that is equal to or less than the total life of you and your opponent. Right? So think about that. You know, if you're in a situation, I don't know what can happen. If you're in a situation where you have 3 life, maybe you didn't shave off any life of your opponent, maybe it's a mirror match. I don't know. Say they also have 3 life. Well, you can KO something that is cost 6 or less. Very, very nice. But if you have 1 or less life, you may add 1 card from the top of your deck to your life area. And this, my friends, is where the grind game begins. Because you can get turns where you can Yamato, pop something on the board, maybe a blocker, maybe something that's a little bit annoying. Go ahead and get that off the board. Add 1 card to your life if you're sitting at 0 or 1 life. Go ahead and still have 1 Dawn attached. Attach that to your queen. Of course, obviously, if the cards in your hand and your life meet the requirements for queen's ability, now you can go ahead and swing and add 1 more life. So all of a sudden, you can go from a turn from being almost into lethal threat, having 1 life remaining, to all of a sudden having 2 life, and then all of a sudden having 3 life. So now, instead of needing 2 kills to beat you, you now need, 2 kills to beat you, 2 attacks to beat you. I do this all in one take, you feel me? Instead of needing 2 attacks to beat you next turn, you now need 4 attacks to beat you next turn. You KO'd something on their board ideally, but then on top of that, now you've developed a huge body on board. Do you see where I'm going with this? The grind game is immaculate. The power lines are great. 9K, 9K, 8K. Being able to pop things on the board with Yamato, being able to spin things back to life with Katakuri, and being able to remove things from play effectively with Dracula Mihawk, you are getting so much control out of this deck. You're grinding them out, you're mentally fatiguing the opponent, and you're controlling the board. And for me, this is what makes Queen an absolute blast, and this is why I'm so excited for Queen. Like, you guys can hear the excitement in my voice. Like, it's actually genuine. Playing this deck is so much fun. It might not be fun for your opponent, but it is so much fun to pilot, and I highly recommend everybody try this out. It's amazing. It is so much fun. Okay, so to end off the video, I'm going to be giving you guys a deck list you could play around with. Shoutouts to Shinba, and I got this list on OnePieceTopDecks.com, so all credits to them. Let's break down the list. I won't talk about things in depth that you guys should already know about. I'll just talk a little bit about the things that you guys might not know, and then I'll talk about the things that I would change to this list that I'm personally running. Again, I haven't won a top event in Japan. Clearly, this person did, so they're a better player, right? Like, they have the results. I don't. So clearly they're doing something right, but I'm just giving my opinion. So for the Queen build, you have your 4 copies of Doflamingo, going to be able to set up your plays, as well as be a blocker. 4 copies of Draco Mihawk, we talked about him at length earlier. 4 copies of Perona Searcher, 4 copies of Kaya, being able to be a 2k counter and draw cards. Now, 4 copies of Ulti. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about this one. Ulti is really good because Ulti is going to allow you to attach 1 Dawn to it to allow its effect to be active, thus making it 5k. It can swing into any leader that's not named Edward Newgate, which is really good, but it allows you to have a little bit of utility. You can bounce back that Perona that you might have played earlier and replay it, or now you have a 1k counter in your hand. Maybe you had a bad hand state and you never had your Sasaki and you had to play your Kaya, or maybe you did play Sasaki and you went ahead and reloaded, and then now you can bounce that back up with Ulti, so you have 2k counters in your hand, or with Kaya, like I said, you draw 2 because of your hand state, and then now you can bounce that back up to your hand. You could do that with Ulti, but the real power comes in the fact of board control, especially when you're going up against Zoro or some of these other decks that might have chump blockers. You can get a 2-for-1, whether you're swinging at a leader and then spinning a card to the bottom of your opponent's deck, or you can go ahead and take out 2 cards. So if you're going up against Zoro, for example, and they have 2 little bodies that, you know, Zoro likes to play, be it the Buggies or any of those other cards, you can go ahead and attack into one of them, KO them, and then the other one can get spun to the bottom of the deck. So you're getting a 2-for-1 special. Really good card. Next, they're running 4 copies of Ice Oni as well as 4 copies of Playgrounds. Now, I'm not a big fan of this. I'll tell you guys what I would change in the build a little bit after. I can understand, I can see a world where this would be useful, especially in a metagame where we're seeing a lot more film Dofi, but I'm still terrified of Ace. I'm still terrified of Whitebeard in this metagame if you are going up against it. And so for me, it's really hard to justify this when there are things like Seaquake, when there are things like 5-cost Marco, when, again, in theory, Ice Oni should be able to deal with 5-cost Marco, but if Ice Oni's already on the board, maybe you used your Playgrounds before, then 5-cost Marco will just instantly pop it. I don't know. In my opinion, I don't really justify, but this person obviously performed and won, so they know something that I don't. Obviously, the 4 copies of Sasaki, 2k counter, 3 copies of Charlotte Katakuri, 4 copies of blocker Capone Gang Beige Yellow, 4 copies of the new blocker Sanji, 1 copy of the Yamato, 3 copies of 3000 Worlds. Obviously, we talked about the Playgrounds, 4 copies of that, and then 3 copies of Red Rock. Okay, so what I would change in the build. So I would drop the Ice Onis for sure. I would drop that as well as the Playgrounds package. That opens up 8 cards. For me, I would then increase the number of Yamatos. From there, I would also decide, do I want to play 4 copies of 3000 Worlds? I think 3 copies of Red Rock is perfectly fine, but I do feel like 4 copies of 3000 Worlds could be really good. So that's something that I would entertain. I would also potentially max out copies of Charlotte Katakuri, and then the rest of the cards that are left, if I don't decide to do that, obviously numbers depending, I'm not sure what the ratios would be, I would round out the rest of the deck with 2k counters, maybe things like the 4-cost Draco Mihawk 2k counter, or just add additional blockers, because blue and yellow do have more blockers in the deck that you can go ahead and throw in to play more of a defensive playstyle and really grind that game out. So that's how I would play my version of Queen. Again, I'm not too big of a fan on the Ice Oni Playgrounds package, but that can change, and maybe you guys can change my opinion. Let me know if you guys know any interesting tech. Honestly, please, I want to get better. I want to enjoy this tech. I see a lot of people playing the Ice Oni, but for me, it doesn't feel as good. Maybe I'm missing something obvious. But with that being said, guys, hopefully this video got you more hype on Queen. And if not, that's completely fine. There's so many fun decks in OPO4. I will be making a video breaking down Don Quixote Doflamingo's, the pure Don Quixote family version, not the film version that everyone's playing. The film version is very strong, potentially best deck in the format, but I do believe that the Don Quixote Pirates version is also very strong. So stay tuned for that. I will catch you guys later. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.